The Great Race. The game is set in the 1930s and we will be driving our half tracks across Africa or across South America because the board is double-sided, so the game lets us do both. So this is a race game. We're gonna try to go from one extremity of the play area to the other. This is the African side of the board. This is the South America, from here to here, or actually from there to there. You decide the direction in which you want to go. It's a race game, so the first player to reach the destination wins, unless multiple players reach the destination at the same time, meaning during the same turn, in which case there is a tiebreaker, and this based on a system of points. You count victory points from various sources, and so for example, coming in a little later but with a vehicle in considerably better shape than someone else's may still give you victory. Each player has a screen that you use to hide your setup. You have your vehicle, of course, that will go on the board on the starting place at the beginning of the game. You have a group of assistants. This is a race game with a worker placement element and a personal display where you will place your assistants to take care of different things, to do different things for you. Also there you have several indicators that tell you how much fuel you have, the condition of your engine, and the condition of your chassis. This indicates also the number of cards that you can have in your hand. These cards will give you different advantages. This is the number of spaces up to which you can move with a single drive action. And of course, as you move, you consume gas, or petrol, as they called it back in the day. And when you go down to zero, well, you gotta get some, or you won't be able to move. The game is mainly a competitive game, a versus kind of game. It also has a solitaire variant, but I haven't played it, so I won't be able to elaborate on that. I played the game also only with two players, which is myself and my daughter Luisa, who is now 9, and she really likes this game. Also, the competitive game comes with a lot of different scenarios, variants, a lot of variety there. So when you consider the two sides of the board, you can play it in either direction. All of these are the variants, a lot of replay value there. A couple of other things before we talk about main gameplay. Money, we are gonna need that to buy all the good stuff that we need. It's paper money, but if we have to use paper money, this is not bad. It's actually pretty thick. It's kind of pleasant to manipulate. It'll get worn out quickly, I'm afraid, but also feels very thematic, very nice. I'll show these because at least I don't see many of these during the game. Different strategies. My daughter collects a lot of money and then has this like burst of activity, and I just collect very little money and I just try to limp my way to the next destination. So a turn starts with a number of cards being drawn from this deck equal to number of players plus 1 and being placed in that section of the board there. And then the player who is last will select a card, say the player likes this one. The player who's first pretty much who has the most progress on the board will select another card, say I select this one, and then the last player collects the card that is left at the end. And so definitely this is one of the many rubber banding mechanics of the game. These cards will give you all sorts of different advantages depending on when you play them. They allow you to repair your engine more effectively. They allow you to get extra gas, extra actions to ignore certain obstacles on the board. A lot of different things. They can be very powerful. But one paradox is, again, remember, the maximum number that you can hold may go down. And both this indicator and this one belong to the engine section of your board. That is, when you take engine damage, you choose which one you want to reduce. I'm taking 3 points of engine damage. I can do 1, 2, 3. Well, that was only 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And since you always want to keep speed, actually, your hand of cards is probably going to shrink quite fast. Again, at least that's my strategy, which may not be the winning one, but it's mine. So first phase of each turn, we get some new cards from this section here. Then everybody will prepare their turn. Will prepare their turn by setting up their display. Remember, your workers or your assistants, you're gonna place them in these slots on the board. And everything looks so nice in the production. Everything is materially so cool. Look at the screen. The screens are thematic. The color matches different screens for different players. Everything looks so good. But then there are these little imperfections, I would say, such as you can put any number of your assistant on this track, and when they do so, they collect money. And the rulebook says, and in the rulebook it looks nice, that the first, basically put any number, and the number that you see there that is visible on the right of the line of assistance that you place there is the number of francs that you're collecting. Right now that would be 40. But they just don't fit in that track. You see how there's a little bit of this really awesome indentation whose purpose is to be so that they sit there comfortably, but they're just too big, and so you end up doing that. And so you're gonna place some of these on this track, and that's the way I place them. I can still see what the one that is visible. I also know at this point if I put 3 means I collect 40 francs. If I put 4 there, 70 francs, and so on and so forth. So during the phase in which you prepare the main actions of the turn, you can send some of your assistants to collect money, and or you can place them in these boxes here, and you can place a number of them. There's no restriction specifically. You can play multiple. You can place multiple ones in a box. And again, they're a little tight. Now, here's another. It may be a small nitpick, but it happens since these indicators here spin around these plastic rings on the bottom. In truth, this is a little wobbly. And so you're placing your workers there, and then as you move around, and there are several of them, sometimes they do fall down, and then you have to rearrange them, and just a little bit irritating, just a little bit annoying for a game that looks so, deluxe, so to speak. So once everybody is said and done, your assistants will be in different sections of your personal display. At that point, everybody leaves their screen, reveal their choices, and then in turn order, we're gonna execute our actions. So there you go. Suppose that right now we're here. Why? Because this way you can see everything in the camera. Now, players will alternate taking actions. When you take an action, first, optionally and for free, without counting as an action, you can buy gas. If you are in a city, these colored spaces here are cities, then a tick, a unit of gas, costs 10 francs. If you are in the wild areas, then it costs 20. You can also play as many cards as you want, if you have any cards that you want to play. Then, again, it's your turn. Buy gas if you want, optionally. Play cards if you want, optionally. Then what's mandatory is you need to perform an action with your assistants. For that action, you can take any and all of your assistants. Actually, you can take all of the assistants on this track here, remove them, and collect the corresponding amount of money. Or, if you remove an assistant from this box, you can take one of these two actions. You can draw a card from the deck, or you can look for a path forward, which means you draw 2 discs from the bag. There is one for Africa and a bag with different terrain tiles for South America. And when you draw from the bag, they will look like this, and they have different kind of challenges, different costs that you have to spend in terms of fuel, different damage they will inflict you, possible other symbols such as this symbol here will cause extra damage to your engine unless you spend an assistant that is placed in that box to remove that danger, or to ignore that danger. Or you can use a card if you have a card that has that symbol that allows you to ignore a danger. And again, different kinds of challenges, different kind of things. Sometimes you have to stop, but you get something good. Sometimes you just have to stop, which is irritating. When you draw your 2 tokens using the Pathfinder action, you place them, creating a path that moves from the place in which you are adjacent to one another. And suppose that I decide to do it like that. And maybe later I get another Pathfinder action and I decide and I draw these 2 and I decide to place them that way, for example. So for that action, for assistance placed there, either I add 2 discs or I draw a card. Assistance placed here, I can remove 1 to take the repair action, in which case that will allow me to repair damage to the engine, which again, remember, is these 2 displays here. And to do so, again, I need to use that action and spend money. 20 francs for each tech that I'm repairing of my engine, 20 francs if I'm in a city, 40 francs if I'm in the wilderness, pretty expensive. There are also cards that will give me spare parts and allow me to get those ticks up, but again, I still have to spend an action to repair. There are even cards that give me that action, but again, it's not for free. Finally, the action that everybody wants to know, the drive action, removing a worker that I placed here from that box allows me, if I'm not using it to repair, to finally drive. And for that action, I can drive a number of spaces up to what my engine lets me. Right now, it would be 3, for example. And every time I enter a new space, I have to pay the corresponding cost. To enter that space, it takes 1 fuel and 1 engine damage, and I put that at 4. Only it's gonna cost me an extra fuel because the circles that have that dark circles, dark border there, they represent particularly difficult terrain and they have that extra cost. And that's the general idea. You move, when you take the drive action, you move for as far as you possibly can, as allowed by your engine capability, how much gas you have, how much damage you can take, and so on and so forth. One last thing, which feels a little cheaty. Apparently, back in the day when you were racing in Africa or South America, you could go on a boat and that still was considered valid. So there's this other option for traveling. You can, if you are in a location that has the kind of connection, then you spend the corresponding amount of francs to get a ticket, and then you can travel that way, which was weird, but it's a totally legitimate strategy. One last thing, when you move into a city, you have to stop moving for that turn because, hey, you want to go shopping, take a shower, watch a movie, I don't know, all the fun stuff. You're doing some sightseeing, and so you got to stop moving regardless of any other circumstances, even if you still have some movement points. This is the general idea. Sounds like a lot, but actually the game is a family game and it's really pretty intuitive. Get several new cards every turn, plot your actions, resolve the actions by moving your assistants off the board, and those actions are again place 2 tiles or draw a card, repair your car or drive, avoid the penalty from this danger, or also if you remove an assistant from here, remove a previously placed token from the board, because sometimes those tokens are really punishing you and they're really not where you wanted to be. And so that's a way of manipulating things on the board a little bit. Some cards also will let you switch tokens around, move them around, and stuff like that. Continue like this until a winner of this amazing great race is established. I enjoyed this game quite a bit in the specific mode in which I played it, which is versus and only 2 players. With my daughter Luisa, we had such a good time. We really enjoyed the game. And at the same time, I saw all the ways in which I think I would not enjoy the game under other circumstances. Well, I looked at the solo version, and it just looked like the AI. It looked like there was a lot of work to make the AI work, and I thought, I don't need to deal with that when I have a player at home who is so happy to play the game. But I also thought that I don't think I will ever want to play this game with 4 players for sure. 3 players maybe, because what concerned me was the possibility of downtime. There will be times where you're stuck in the jungle, you're stuck in the desert, and you spend your turn entirely or almost entirely collecting money. And so you put all or almost all of your assistants there to collect money, which of course in terms of pace means that's it. That's my turn. Okay, maybe I played a card, but not much more. As other people maybe collect some cards and then they spend them, they drive, they put down some tiles, travel there, switch tiles around, interactions, a lot of stuff like that. Uh, and I'm just there, sitting there as they take their actions. Which again, if there is only one other person, I'm perfectly fine. If there are 3 other people, I just don't want to be there, and I will feel guilty when I see somebody else sitting there because they spend their turn collecting money, and I didn't. Some of the variants, I'm sure, may address those elements, but if you're just looking for the base, for the straightforward game, downtime is not a problem at all. With 2 players, it can be I believe, with more. With 2 player also, yeah, you have some negative effects that you can play against the other player. It can get a little bit confrontational, but at least with 2 players, I do it to you, you do it to me. There isn't maybe the feeling of we're all ganging up against the person and the person is left behind. And matter of fact, the game has a pretty good balance. Every game that we played ended up pretty close, but at the same time not so close that we thought, well, then it's always exactly the same, and so good gameplay is not rewarded. There is such a paradox as a game being too perfectly balanced, and then, well, you may just flip a coin before the game starts. But no, it was close enough, because there are so many interesting rubber banding mechanics. The fact that I spend actions to find the path and you spend actions to walk, to drive through it. You don't have to spend an action to do so. But then I spend some actions to mess it up for you, and so on and so forth. So the back and forth is pretty interesting. The pace of the game that alternates between collecting these resources, burning them all to push through hostile territory until you're just limping through the next place, and it slows down again, build it up, another big rush of activity, which again is perfectly fine with 2 players. So it's a race game with a really interesting theme, with absolutely captivating art, and with some really interesting good mechanics. As I said in my main segment, I'm surprised that there are some elements of the production that just seem to be subpar. There are some elements, some components which you place a stickers on some discs. The stickers are bigger than the discs. The size of the assistants, as you saw, does not really work with the displays. Just these little weird elements. I don't know how they were not corrected by the developers when everything else looks so good with some unpolished details here and there. But generally speaking, this is a fun game with a lot of replay value, with a lot of interesting elements, nice decisions. It may have a confrontational element that not everybody will like, and I am worried about downtime with more than 2 players. But as a 2 player game so that young players can play together, adults can play together, adults and children, as a 2 player game for family, even really for gamers, I believe this is a solid option. The Great Race, a big box full of fun stuff.